Welcome to the Good Shepherd and the Child podcast, where we explore the spirituality of the Christian child through the method of the catechesis of the Good Shepherd. I am your host, Carrie Mecki Lozano, with my dear friend Anna Hurdle as my co-host. One of the many benefits of being a member of the United States Association of the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd is access to some member-only exclusive events to help you grow as a catechist. And recently, we just had one of those events that was focused on practical life. And Anna Hurdle and Maggie Radzik were the guests, the Montessori guests that were speaking into practical life. And from there, we received a surplus of questions about practical life that were not able to be answered on that webinar. And so today, Maggie and Anna join me on the podcast to answer a good handful of those questions, both about the level 1 child and the second plane child. How does practical life live in the level 2 and level 3 atrium? And so they answer a whole bunch of questions about that. It's a really great episode. I'm so excited to share it with you. I hope you enjoy. Maggie, welcome back to the Good Shepherd and the Child podcast.
Thank you.
Hi, Maggie.
Hi, Anna.
It's great to have you.
Thank you.
Maggie, would you be willing to start off our conversation with sharing with us how you got involved in catechesis of the Good Shepherd?
Sure. My best friend, Naisha, who I met in college, Naisha Meehan, encouraged me to take the 0 to 3 AMI training with Dr. Montanaro in 1989, 1990, I think, and completely changed my life. And as we were both going through it together, we kept saying, this seems so Catholic. This seems so Catholic. There's got to be some type of spiritual. And Dr. Montanaro said, oh, yes, when we talked to her about it. She said, there's catechesis of the Good Shepherd. And we had been in Denver taking that course. And I can't remember how we found out that the following summer, Carol Dittberner and Rose were offering a level 1 at the Episcopal Cathedral in Denver. And so we said, we're coming back next summer. And that was it. And it just completely, I mean, the 0 to 3 changed my life. And then that first level 1, that was it. Started on a path.
Yeah. What a beautiful path. And how neat that it started with Silvana Montanaro. That's a really neat beginning.
Yes.
And what a gift to be able to study with her.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. She was she was wonderful. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to have both of these beautiful Montessorians here with me to discuss practical life. I know that you two recently were guests on a webinar with our membership coordinator, Mary Heinrich, and it was so well received. Hundreds and hundreds of people came to be a part of that webinar with you two because everybody's very hungry to understand practical life on a deeper level. And from that webinar came so many questions that people had about practical life that we were not able to answer completely on that webinar. So we are going to answer some of those questions today on this podcast. So we have questions of all sorts and sizes about practical life. So we'll just see how far we go. So I also want to point all of you to an episode that we did on the podcast with our beautiful Montessorian friend, Sherry Mock, way back in episode 52, where she also spoke beautifully about practical life. So I'd really like for that episode to be a companion episode to this one that we're doing today, because the two will really answer a lot of those practical life questions that you might have about this very Montessori topic, this practical life. So I thought that we could begin with the two of you helping us just understand and define what is practical life.
The practical life activities are the first real phenomena that Dr. Montessori discovered when she began her work with children in 1907. She had no idea what she was going to find when she started this group, observing this group of 62 children. She hired 2 women to work with them. And the children showed such an intense interest in the work of the adult when they were cooking, cleaning, repairing something, and they would frequently say, me help, or me do it. And Dr. Montessori saw that there were two reasons that the child wasn't able to help. Number one was they didn't have tools fashioned for their hands. And then the second reason was the attitude of the adult. And so she thought, well, let's work on both of those. So she put tools. She met with some artisans in Rome and had brooms, mops, dustpans, screwdrivers, cooking utensils, and just started putting them out on the shelf next to the toys that she had put in the environment. And then worked with the adult to invite the child to work with them. And then she, again, sat back and observed. And she noticed, I mean, this, would take a long time to expound on the whole thing. But what she noticed was that the difference in the child, and they were freely chosen. They would choose these brooms, mops, cleaning utensils, hand washing on their own. And she noticed the difference after the adult had shown them how to use whatever the tool was and then set them free to practice. She saw afterwards the calmness of the child, the change in them, how it was bringing about what she ultimately called normalization, this whole way of being of the child, of joy, of obedience, of cooperation. I mean, and she was fascinated by it. So it took years before she completely understood it. But one of the most important things she noticed, was that the child repeated the activity over and over again. And she noticed that the child really had no interest in whether or not the floor got cleaned or the dishes got cleaned or their hands got cleaned or whatever it was they were doing. She ended up saying they are working for an interior purpose, not an external goal, which is what the adult is working for. And, it took a long time before science could prove that, yes, all of those activities where they are crossing the midline of the body, where the child is concentrating their whole personality on a task, that is bringing together mind, body, and soul. That is bringing the body under the direction of the will. And it's, physically, it's bringing about an integration of the two hemispheres of the brain. And of course, the child could never tell us that, but it was from her medical training as a doctor that she was observing what happened after the child had been engaged in these activities and repeated it over and over, that now they were ready to sit and receive, like, I think what we would consider more academic, they were ready in an atrium setting, the one of the outcomes of practical life is now they're calm and they're ready to receive that parable of the Good Shepherd. They're ready to receive the mustard seed. But I think if we don't really understand practical life, we want to jump to what we think is the good stuff, the scripture presentations, the presentations on the liturgy. And the child isn't ready for it. Their personality hasn't become harmonious yet because they haven't been given the work that their whole being is requiring. They want to engage in meaningful, purposeful activity that coordinates their movements, that feeds their senses. And that's what practical life does. I think one of the most beautiful things that I've experienced is when Dominican priests or Dominican sisters, who don't know anything about anything about CGS, and they come into the atrium and they say, oh, this is St. Thomas, right away. They just see the food for the senses, the importance of freedom, the importance of repetition. And then we hear that beautiful quote by Dr. Montessori, and I'm not sure if it's The Child in the Church or the Mass Explained to Children. I know it's in one of those texts where she said, "What is Mass if not the ultimate practical life activity? What does the priest do but he processes in slowly," and you think walking on the line, where we do the procession. He bows. He makes very controlled gestures. He folds. He wipes the vessels. He washes his hands. And she said it was the children that showed her that this was the ultimate expression of practical life. She said practical life has its fulfillment in the Mass. And if we don't understand that, it can be, and if the parents don't understand that, we have to share that with them. We can see it as like something to just keep them occupied for the first couple of months till we get to the good stuff. But it's all good stuff,
It's all good.
And we think of the kingdom parables. What is he talking about? He's talking about a woman taking 3 measures of flour. Well, how do you take a measure? How do you, all of that is practical life. Mm-hmm. The hidden treasure, the growing seed, they're digging, they're all of that is practical life. The good shepherd looking for the found sheep. He's walking and he's searching and he's looking. I don't think there's a really an activity that, or a presentation in any of our CGS that doesn't involve practical life. We unfold the altar cloth. We take the chalice and we put it on the altar. All of that is practical life.
And to the naked eye, to the untrained eye, just looks like they're spinning beans, doesn't it?
Yes. Yes. And I've had parents when they've come in, that's why I started saying you have to stay a whole hour when you come for an observation. And it was a father who led me to that, because we were having adults come in for 15, 20 minutes, and leaving. And then someone told me, no, you need to have them stay for at least an hour so they see a complete cycle of activity. And it was a father who saw a little boy make a big spill with something. I can't remember. Maybe it was hand washing. And he, was, spilled water all over the floor, and he walked away from it, because and then a couple of older girls saw the water on the floor, and they went and got the Swiffer mop with the cloths, and they said, "Hey, there's water on the floor. Let's clean it up." And they cleaned it up together, and the little boy came over toward the end and was watching them clean it up. And he smiled, they smiled, they weren't even aware that he was the one that made the spill. But the father at the end said, "Okay, now I realize why you made me stay an entire hour." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, if I had left after 15 minutes, I never would have put my child in this environment. I thought it was crazy that this little boy's spill, the adult saw it and just did nothing about it." And he thought, what is going on here? But he said, "You did that because you knew it was going to build virtue in the other children to notice something, and they could take care of it." And the little boy was okay with his mistake. I mean, I was amazed what this father saw. He ended up putting all 5 of his children through atrium, and I didn't even really see what he saw. But I said, yeah, gosh, you're right. Just somebody else's suggestion that you stay for a whole cycle. So that's what I mean. We can't unpack everything that's in practical life in one podcast. But Dr. Montessori herself said, practical life is the heart and soul of the environment. And I think we trust her. And when it's done right, we see it. We see, of course, this is, it is the heart and soul of the environment.
Yes.
And we've observed its fruits in the children when it's done right, like you said. where if you're questioning it like that, Dad, just watch and see what happens. See the growth that you see within the child, within the community. And that practical life is so powerful for that. I feel like you tapped on so many of the questions that were submitted. So many people ask the question, does practical life stay out all year long? And I feel like what you just shared so much answers that question of course it would. Why would you take it away if you can see that it has all of this value beyond just the physical learning how to have a pincher grasp? That why would you take it away? There is this spiritual layer behind the practical life that's also happening.
Right. I think it goes right to the heart of John Paul II's theology of the body.
Oh, yeah.
Our body is not separate from our soul. Everything we do is united. And that metaphysical child, like Sophia saw, that child who is not separate from their actions, everything they do is physical and spiritual at the same time.
Yeah.
That concentration that they are developing as they choose these activities that to an adult eye have no purpose. We would never sit and just spoon beans. But what it's doing to the child, what it's bringing about is leading to contemplation.
But we might get lost in kneading bread or ironing. We have those same moments,
Yes.
don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Those moments of flow.
Definitely. I think of women, how many women say right before they were going to give birth, right before their water broke, what did they do? They went and they started deep cleaning.
Nesting.
They're about to enter into the greatest activity of their life. They're going to be birthing new life. And what are they doing? Practical life. They're going and there is something. So what did Mother Teresa do when she went to the places, her houses in India? She would give a talk to the sisters and then she would go and scrub toilets. She didn't sit before the Blessed Sacrament all day long. Practical life was a part of her life. And Teresa of Avila said, we find God in the pots and in the pans. It's as important as everything else.
Because I really want to make sure everybody hears, I'm going to ask you a question that I feel like you've already answered, but I want to make sure that everybody hears what we're trying to say about practical life. So what would the two of you say is the religious benefit to practical life? How is practical life tied into the life of the church?
Well, I'll add to what all the beautiful words that Maggie has already shared with us. And it's not to supplant, it's just to add on. The practical life activities give a grounding in moral development. And just that example of the two girls who cleaned up the spill, there we go. We have an example. But the boy who dropped the pitcher or the bowl, whatever, had the vessel with the water in it. Nobody had to scold him. Nobody had to reprimand him. But he still saw that when one drops something, it falls to the floor, it spills. Sometimes it even breaks. And was this even due to his carelessness or his not holding something correctly, two hands, thumb, whatever he's been shown? We don't know, because that is part of learning. That is part of growing as well. But to be able to see not only the fruits of our actions, but to also be able to see some of the other reactions that happen when we lose our grip on something, or if we're looking at grace and courtesy, if we hurt a friend's feelings. that sort of thing. But that grounding in moral development begins in practical life.
Absolutely. Yes.
I would add, in regards to prayer, our religious life of prayer, that practical life builds concentration. And then concentration leads to contemplation, which is prayer. So allowing children to work with practical life and repeat and repeat and repeat how often, how many times they want to, and not disrupt that, not force them to share, but allow them to work until they're satisfied, builds concentration, which leads to contemplation, which is prayer.
Yes.
And I'm always reminded of when we're looking at that, the covenant of gift or the theology of gift, the two triangles of the gifts of God beginning with creation.
Yes.
The mineral world and then the plants and animals and so forth. And our most basic response before even saying thank you is to work.
Yes. Yes. That's so amazing. You say that we just had our staff retreat this morning, and in my brilliance, I thought I needed to tell the priest what we needed to hear for our staff retreat. How humiliating. So I emailed him what I thought we needed: spiritual childhood. And, well, he chose, thank God, not to listen to me. And he spoke about work. And it was so beautiful, starting with Adam and Eve, about that work is a gift and the work of the hand. And this is a priest that really doesn't know much about Montessori or CGS, but he has been in the atrium a few times, and he finds it fascinating that they prepare cruets, and he's just, he's enthralled, and that they will wash the gesture cloth at cloth scrubbing and wash the cruets at dishwashing, once they know how to do dishwashing. And he, kind of says, maybe I need to have my sacristan come over here. And this is, he's very lovely. But what he said about work was just, and I just thought, this is so funny that, here we're going to be doing this podcast this evening about practical life. And here he's talking about, the importance of the work of the hand, and that for the young child, we know it is, what did Dr. Montessori say is the great work of man is to bring about the unity of the personality. The mind has to bring the body under the control of the will. That and nobody can do that for the child. You can't eat soup for your child when they're hungry, just like you can't develop your child's will for them. They have to do it in conjunction with the physical environment. They need to find what they need in the prepared environment. And Dr. Montessori said the child will tend toward what they need. And when you have those visit days with those 3, 3.5, 4-year-olds, they go right to the spooning tray. They take it off the shelf and they start spooning.
Yeah.
And the new catechist is so surprised, wow, they really do want to do that. They really want to, and it passes. That's it, it doesn't last. I mean, like Anna, like you said on the Zoom presentation, by 7.5, 8, well, even before that, they're not interested in repeating that over and over. There's a window of time that they want to do that. And it is bringing about neural connections. It's bringing about this beautiful normalization where the body now, like St. Thomas Aquinas said, the body has to be under the control of the will. And then we have a unified personality. And that is the ultimate role of practical life, to bring about this union of mind, body, soul.
And there's so much theology of the body, so much moral development in that statement, so much.
Yes. And it's so simple. that's why I think we overlook it. You know, it's so simple. A child pouring beans back and forth. And, oh, can that really be? I want them to sit and listen to the Good Shepherd, you know?
Right.
Well, they're not. It's all part of one whole.
Right. Trust.
Yes.
Okay, another question that goes along with this religious theme that was submitted was, can we adapt practical life exercises to reflect a religious theme? What would you two say to that?
No.
I think practical life is already religious because
Yes.
it's part of who we are.
Right. And there is a Montessori principle at work called isolation of the difficulty. And we are isolating. If a child is pouring, we've isolated the difficulty. And that is being able to transfer the liquid or the beans from one vessel to the other.
Right. I just want to clarify that isolation of difficulty means if we try and have too many aims within a work, you've lost what the child is trying to gain. So you isolate the one difficulty that the child is trying to grow in at this time. So to add a religious theme to pouring, for example, it takes that away.
I think as adults we often try to multitask. And I think as we've all tried that, we're coming to the conclusion that it's best not to do that, even as adults. But children can't really do it.
Right.
I have done things indirectly in practical life. I've done with the colors of the season. So,
like tinting or using a certain color cloth
or when it's, preparation time for whatever the rocks are that, or the objects that they are using to tong from one bowl to another. I've changed those from green to purple. And I don't say anything about it, but they come in and it's, and it's kind of, neat. You change the color. But it's still the same activity that they need to do with the hand that brings about, and I don't say anything about it. Or the spooning, might change. I might change the color to white grains, during Christmas or Easter. Or I might change the color of the spoon to a gold spoon during Easter and just not say anything about it. But it's the same activity. So just bringing in, the change in liturgical season indirectly. But there's nothing, specifically Catholic about those. It's how we're made. It's who the human person is.
Yeah.
We do remove flower arranging during Lent and Advent in our atrium.
Do you do that at level 1, Anna?
We do.
Oh,
I've always done it during Lent of level 1. I've never done it during Advent. That's different. I haven't heard that one before, so that's another way to do that.
It's our we're in a parish atrium, and it's our parish custom, so we follow that as well.
That.
Okay,
that's something to consider.
Okay. I've done just simple, kind of more boring purple flowers.
Yes.
I haven't taken them out, during Lent. But that's a good, because our parish too. Yeah, we don't have flowers during Lent. I think that's a beautiful practice.
I think this though gives me an opening to say that there are a lot of ideas out there. And we don't have to use them all.
That's right.
Like Anna does not use flowers during Advent and Lent, and that follows their church's practice, and that's what they've decided to do in their atrium. Does that mean that?
And we've been doing it for over 30 years.
Yeah. So does that mean that every atrium across the world should not use flowers? No, that's not what that means. It's just an idea to ponder. And that's just an example. Apply that across the board there. Okay, let's move on to practical life in level 1. So there were many questions about what practical life exercises do you typically use in the level 1 atrium?
Well, I think some essential. I'm thinking right away as you asked that. An essential activity is the hand washing stand, which we usually put near baptism, and we make it yellow and white. That's the color coding for hand washing. And I'll never forget one of the missionaries of charity when they were first in our level 1 formation courses. And there were 3 or 4 of them, and then a whole bunch of other participants watching hand washing. And the questions, after the presentation, there were, different questions. But this one missionary of charity said, "Oh, I see what you're doing with this activity. This has nothing to do with getting the hands cleaned. You're teaching prayer." And all the other participants turned to her and said, "What?" And she said, "Well, yes, didn't you see how slowly they did it? How, I can't remember which one of us did it, but how slowly they poured the water, the feel of the water." She said that was a moment of prayer. That had nothing. And it was just so beautiful how she saw that right away. And it certainly is a definite moment of prayer when the child, but okay, so what do you need to do to be able to do hand washing? Well, you need to be able to pour. So the dry pouring, right, from the beans, and then pouring water, being able to fold the cloth that you're going to, so folding, you're going to fold the cloth that you dry your hands with. So I think the really key, if you have a very small atrium, I think flower arranging and hand washing are key. If you have space, dishwashing and cloth washing is wonderful. They spend a lot of time. It's a lot of activity. It's coordinating the movement. Just like, John Agobi said, what's needed for prayer is language, coordinated movement, and silence. And they do these activities in silence. So then the preliminary activities before they do that would be those pouring, cutting, pouring with a funnel. Those would be those shorter activities on a shelf, practicing cutting. But I think if you have a very small atrium, definitely hand washing, which, of course, before lavabo and, baptism with the enjoyment of water and the power of water, the gift of water. And then if you have more space, dishwashing, cloth washing, ironing.
I love that when the children get to that work of baptism and preparing the cruets, all of that work, they don't have to worry about spilling.
Right.
Because they've already become confident. They've already become proficient at pouring to where they can fully be present.
Right.
To what is going on and the sign that is speaking.
Yes, right.
Allows them to really focus in on that theology. Yeah.
Yeah, and they see the priest at Mass preparing that he is pouring. He's pouring out of 2 different containers.
Right.
He's, why isn't that done ahead of time? Why is that included in the Mass? I mean, that's not that we would ever say to a level 1, but it's just amazing to think about. And they're so drawn in once they are given glass to pour with. And then hopefully, we encourage the parents to sit up front at Mass, and then they're watching the priest pour, and they're watching him wipe, and they're watching him fold, and then all of the care that the sacristan has given, all of those, cloths have been ironed and they've all been cared for. And the absorbent mind absorbs all that. They couldn't, communicate it to us in language, but they've absorbed all the care that is given to those sacred objects at Mass. And we're involving them in that in a nonverbal way that shows respect to them. And I think they just naturally intuit it.
Gianna Gobi quote that you gave a few minutes ago reminded me of the silence game and
Yes.
walking on the line.
Yes. Yes. Key part of practical life.
And that doesn't require any shelf space at all.
Right.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Right. Those are powerful.
Yes, they are, aren't they? And I think adults are stunned at how much the young child loves silence.
Mm-hmm.
They love silence. Yeah, those two activities. Yeah. And she, in listening to God with children, it's so simple to have a catechist present those.
What about ratio? So if I have 10 kids in my level 1 atrium, what would you suggest is a good number of practical life activities to have out on my shelves?
I think you have to see the space. I mean, you certainly need the key catechetical presentations. You need space for the model altar, for the Good Shepherd, for the Last Supper, for the prayer table, for biblical geography. You need space for all that. So knowing that everybody's not going to be doing, there's one of everything. If there were 10, I would say at least 10, with the expression activities, with cutting, pasting, watercolor, and they're small. I mean, these are small trays, 5.5 inches with 2 small pitchers or 2 bowls. That's where a podcast is a little hard to.
Yeah.
I'm feeling like we need to do I don't know, like everybody send in pictures of their practical life, that the polishing activities, that you can have 4 polishing sets, the brass, the silver, the wood, the glass, on one small shelf. The trays are not large. And they love to polish that glass chalice, when it's not in use.
Yeah.
So I would say at least 10, and then, we don't duplicate. And then when one child wants something that another one's working with, we just say, well, you have 2 choices. You can choose something else till it's available, or you can sit and wait.
Mm-hmm.
And to see that 3.5-year-old, 4-year-old sit and wait for 10 minutes, that is development of the will.
Right.
That is beautiful delayed gratification. And it's their choice. They can choose to do something else.
Waiting is a work.
Yes. A friend of mine calls it the fasting of the atrium, when one child has to wait for another child. And again, we're not going to ever tell that first child, hey, Sally is waiting to do this. So can you, wrap up? We would never do that.
Never.
Right. So at least 10 practical life trays on the shelves. Is that the same at the beginning of the year and the end of the year? You're going to have 10 throughout the whole year, or are you going to decrease the number of practical life throughout the year?
I would not decrease it, but it depends on if it's a brand new group and nobody's been in there before. So if no one's been in there, you're going to increase as the time goes on, but you're not going to take anything away. So the things that we take away are the transition shelf, the puzzles, just those simple things that are in there for the first few weeks so that children have something to do while the catechist is giving these initial. That's a shelf that goes away.
We call it the free shelf.
The free, okay, that's a great.
But
that's a great,
other people have called it other names as well. So.
Yeah, that's the shelf. When they come for their visit, you tell them, these are things I don't need to show you how to do.
Right.
You can take those to a table and work with them right away.
Right.
That shelf gets replaced with, more complicated practical life. I mean, that's how we do it in my atrium.
But at the same time, the child is learning a practice of choosing work, taking it off the shelf, taking it to a table or a rug, working with it.
Concentrating,
and then taking it back and restoring it to the environment, making it beautiful for the next person.
Right.
Yes, there's freedom and responsibility right there.
And yet another grounding in moral development.
Right.
Yes.
Making your work beautiful for the next person.
Right.
Yes. Yes. And those children, from time to time, you'll have one that I don't want to do anything. Okay, you can sit right here. They don't have to choose. They don't. They can sit and watch from the observer chair. Every once in a while you have one of those that it just takes a few weeks till, wow, you're really going to respect what I say. You're not going to make me do anything. You're not, and then, I think I want to choose that. Okay, let me show it to you. If it's not something from the free shelf, I can show you, and that's a very brief presentation. Now you are free to repeat that for as long as you want.
Yeah.
I feel like those children, their choices haven't been respected yet, and they don't trust the adults, and they're more rare in my experience, but when they come, I think that is huge for them, that they don't have to do anything. You're not free to interrupt anyone else, and you're not free to take something that hasn't been shown to you, but you are free to sit there the entire 2 hours if you want.
Right.
That's fine.
That's really important. I'm really glad that you said that. I think that needs to be understood. Okay, let's pivot. Let's now look at the second plane child. So level 2 and level 3. This is an area I think that people also have a lot of questions about regarding how do you have practical life? What does practical life look like? Do you have spooning beans in level 2? Like what transfers over and what is brand new?
Right. So when we did the webinar, we talked about how oftentimes when folks come to a level 2 course, they're asking, where's the practical life? And when are we going to get to that part? It's my favorite. And so when we say, we'll talk about it and such, but we don't have those exercises set up on the shelf in those beautifully curated individual trays of work. And then, people say, I love that. And I can see why, because it can be for the adult when we are setting that work up and finding the materials and making it beautiful. It is such an enjoyable experience. And then to watch the children work with it. It's so peaceful, and I feel like it always lowers your blood pressure to just witness and to observe children working with practical life work. But the problem is, if we want to call it a problem, because it's not a problem, the child is no longer that first plane child. The child is no longer constructing him or herself, and the child is no longer in that first plane, in that absorbent mind period, where he or she is repeating, is in this sensitive period for repetition, fine objects, and so forth. So this idea of repeating work simply for the activity itself, that goes away.
Totally.
And so even though we might love it, we can say the second plane child, the child in levels 2 and 3, does not love it. And they will let us know if we try to set up an environment that is meant for first plane children. Or if we present to them in that way as well,
right,
that they will let us know.
Yes.
So if you have a child that's in your level 2 or level 3 atrium that did not go to level 1, you are not going to bring a practical life set from level 1 up to level 2 so that they can experience these benefits of practical life that we've been talking about.
No.
Correct.
That would not work.
Does that make you sad, Carrie?
No, it doesn't. I just wanted to reinforce that idea.
Okay, great. Well, there is a little sadness about it, but no.
But now they want to do it for the community.
Yes.
So they love to iron now, because now they are ironing the prayer cloth that is going to come out next week. And they're working on an adult ironing board. It's just made a little bit lower. That, who wants to help get the things ready for the procession next week? What do we need to do? We need to clean the extinguishers. They love cleaning extinguishers, but you don't have it all set up. You've got the extinguisher cleaner there, you've got the cotton swabs and and they take it themselves. You have the mats for the table. They love to get all the extinguishers. In our atrium, one of the level 2, the rite of passage is now you can light your own candle. The adult doesn't light the candles. So that's one of the first things we show them is how to strike a match. And they are just over the moon at lighting, their own candle when they go to do scripture things. And then they want to take care of it. They came up with a separate receptacle for pencil shavings and spent matches because that was all wood. We should collect these and then have a bonfire with them. And we were like, that's a great idea. So we have a separate trash can, and one of them made a little sign, and above the trash can it says pencil shavings and spent matches only. And before a feast day, we have a little bonfire with all that, extra wood. They notice now when the statues on the prayer table are tarnished or, and they want to polish them. They want to do flower arranging for the prayer table or to beautify the environment. So flowers are there and you have vases there, but they gather the materials and take them to a table. It's not all set up. And in the beginning, Anna, I can't agree with you more. In the beginning, I didn't really trust that when I was first in a level 2. And because I love the level 1 setup, I had several trays and nope, they never chose it. And whoever I asked who was in CGS, much more experienced than me, they said, oh, well, you're not supposed to be doing that. So then I just made the materials available. Like, here's where you can find the polish bottles here, with all the labels on them. And it was so against my, it just looks.
What's beautiful.
but that's what they wanted. Right. And they loved it. They wanted to, it's just a total, I think of that quote by Dr. Montessori. She said, if I could give parents one gift, I would give them the gift of knowing that at 7, you have a brand new child. Yeah. Everything has changed. And that practical life comes right into that. They still, of course, we all need to deal with the pots and the pans, but they want to do it themselves. They want to notice when the shelves are dusty. And then, oh boy, 2 girls will go through the whole environment, dusting everything. Or the boys with the vacuum cleaner. We need to move all the tables and chairs to vacuum underneath there, and they want to do it with a real vacuum. It's just different from the level 1.
And then they will set up little job charts and ways
and job checkers.
Yes, and that all comes from them. We don't do it.
Yes.
If we try to take control over it, it doesn't land quite the same way.
Right. No. We need to highlight that. It comes from them. If you suggest it, it's not going to work. So if they never come up with that on their own, it's okay. You don't need it in your space, obviously.
Sometimes and I did this in my classroom before I retired as well. I would remember something out loud. I remember one time some children in the class did this.
Yes.
And you can do that? I didn't know.
Yes. Yeah. Or, no one has ever, and when they hear no one has ever, they want to, no one's ever done that yet. I can do that.
They like, say less.
Yes.
I love it. That's awesome. A few others that I've noticed my level 2 kids really enjoy is table washing. Oh, do they love table washing? My level 1 kids like that too, but the second plane child really likes table washing. And plant care is very important as well.
Mm-hmm. So there is a quote I'd like to share. It's from one of Dr. Montessori's lectures on the second plane, one of the London lectures, and she is talking about this. She says, in the second plane, it is not enough merely to continue these exercises from the first plane, because now the child is already independent and all the actions for the movement are no longer necessary because coordination now exists.
Yeah, that's great. That's it. That's perfect. I have experience, I wonder if you have too, Anna, I have experience taking in 7.5, 8-year-olds who were never in level 1, and they never had that level 1 experience, and taking them on a tour of the level 1 atrium and saying, this is what is done, with the younger children, and them seeing spooning and pouring and just taking it off the shelf and wanting to work with it. And, but that's it. It's almost like one time is enough. Have you seen that? Have you, like almost like there's a regret, like, oh, wow, they're drawn to it.
It kind of scratches an itch.
Yes. That's a great way.
And it probably also affirms their mastery, that self-confidence.
Yes.
Because it won't hold them.
Right, definitely. It won't.
Okay, so what about the difference between level 2 and 3? Are there any practical life differences between those two?
Not really.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think they do more complicated handworks. They want to do more bookbinding. They want to, but I see the same in them noticing what's needed in the environment, and they just do it in bits and spurts.
Right.
But it's more the handwork, wanting to do more complicated calligraphy or more really detailed watercolor or like I said, bookbinding, or their missile. Oh boy, do they go back and decorate that missile and once they finish that final missile, and that's a big work.
That is a big work.
Because the work does get more complicated itself, it gets bigger. There's also an opportunity for more handwork that goes with that. But as far as care of the environment, the elevated grace and courtesy lessons, those are pretty even across level 2 and level 3, remembering that Dr. Montessori did not separate the second plane.
Right.
She viewed that plane as one continuous.
6 to 12. Yes, I'm so glad you're saying that. Yes. 6 to 12, that there really isn't a separation. That came along later.
Right.
Yeah.
But you also just brought up a really good point of a practical life for second plane, which we spoke about this season, is grace and courtesy for the second plane child.
Yes.
Where we have some pretty basic ones in level 1, the grace and courtesy for level 2 and 3 is just innumerous, right? And we have a whole podcast episode 169 on that. So I'll just reference that in the show notes so people can learn more about it there. But just to really reiterate the fact that the practical life of grace and courtesy is very important in level 2 and 3.
Yes. And it goes once again hand in hand with moral development and social development.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Well, what about on a practical level, presenting practical life? What tips would you give someone about how you're moving, how you're speaking, just the practical, what does that look like?
Okay, we're talking about level 1.
Which level are you talking?
Yeah, that's a little bit more level 1 of a question that they had, I'm sure.
Yes.
Because level 2, it's more, but maybe speak into that. Like in level 2 and 3, it's going to look different. So
it's
maybe
totally
both.
different. Totally. Yeah. So level 1, you are just going to name what it is. This is silver polishing. And then model how to hold the tray, put the tray back on the shelf. Would you like to carry the silver polishing tray to a table? because we want them to start being independent. So then they carry it to the table. Let's bring the mat, or if you bring the mat first, whatever you decide, this is the mat for silver polishing. Give them a place to put their hands. I'm going to show you how to use the silver polishing. You may place your hands on your lap. When I'm finished, it will be your turn. And then you just name each thing. Silver polish as you take it out of the tray, the dish to hold the silver polish, how we put the polish on, how we take the polish off.
Do you say that phrase like the dish to put the polish on, or do you just say dish?
I go back and forth. I know Claudia and I really respect that too, just does it the first time, no words at all. So definitely fewer words, maybe just this is silver polish, as few words as possible. I'm still, kind of refining that. And then, when I'm finished, it will be your turn. And then no words at all, and then super slow movement. So that's why open and close is so important, right? They've already learned how to unscrew a jar, that the same type of jar or bottle that you're going to be using in polishing. So this is not a new thing. They've practiced with open and close, where you had no words. You just showed how to take the tops off and put the tops back on. So they've repeated that. So now you're taking the top off. They've already used the pipette. So that's where each of these activities, what do they need to know in this activity? And that's one of the preliminaries. So they've already squeezed the pipette, but you're doing it, you're squeezing it, you're letting it go. Then you're very gently lifting it out of the bottle, squeezing it into the dish, putting it back, screwing it on slowly. Then taking whatever you put the polish on with, we use a cotton swab, you're dipping it in and you're starting to very slowly polish. Oh, sorry, I forgot to, after you put everything out on the mat, then you say, let's go find something silver to polish. And that's when you can, or brass or wood, that's when you can walk through your atrium and say, this is wood, this is wood, this is wood, or this is made of brass, this is made of brass, this, which would you like to choose to polish? And then they can carry it back to the table. Then you show them the whole process, and polishing a section of it, but not speaking at all. And they are just completely enthralled with the super slow motion of your hands. And that's where it just becomes meditative. They get so drawn into the circular motion of they have no care whatsoever that the silver is getting polished or the brass. It's the whole motion. It's this purposeful activity. And then you go through the whole thing. You show the steps of cleanup. Now it's your turn. And you've, retrieved a clean applicator for them, a clean cloth and you're there to support them in case they forget a step. And if they are totally confident in what they're doing and they're making a mistake, you don't say anything about it. If they look up and ask, like, is this yes, that's for putting the polish on.
What if they do it different than how you did it? When would you intervene?
That's fine. That is fine. The only time I would intervene is if they're really misusing it. If they're, for some reason, and I've never had this happen, but if they were to start putting the polish on their face or something like that, no, the polish is just for silver objects. We'll put it on the silver. You may place it on the silver object, but never had a child do that.
Right. That destructive, disruptive, or dangerous, that's when we will intervene.
Exactly. But usually the whole setup is so beautiful that they're just dying to get to that activity. And they usually just want to put polish on and on and on and on. They'll go through the whole bottle. That's why we fill the bottle about halfway full, right? And then, if now would you like to take the polish off? You can show that whenever they stop. And they might say no, and they might replace the object back to the shelf full of polish. Okay, now let's put everything away, and then an older child will see that, oh, somebody left the polish on this, and they'll take care of it. Or if it's a brand new group, the assistant or the catechist takes care of it at the end.
Right.
But that's where their interest stopped. And we don't, the object is not to get them to do it all the way through. It's to inspire interest. It's to give the presentation. You'll give it again, and they'll see you give it again to another child. They're not going to do it perfectly the first time. And they shouldn't. That's not the object,
Right.
It's for them to watch a whole presentation, to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and then you help them with the restoration of the material, and then it's going to happen that they'll take it out and they'll walk away in the middle, and you're over at the Good Shepherd. Okay, that's okay. The assistant notes it. Okay, represent, polishing to so-and-so.
I think you're making the point that they won't do it perfectly the first time. That's just so important. That
yes.
I always think if they do it perfectly the first time, it's a sign to me that I waited too late.
Yeah, that's exactly what Dr. Montessori said. She said you've missed the boat. If they've done it perfectly, then they don't need it.
But we always want that challenge to be like that Goldilocks, just right challenge. If it's too difficult, it creates anxiety, nervousness. But if it's too simple, if it's too easy for them, it creates boredom and apathy.
Right. Exactly. And that's why when that 3-year-old goes over to that polishing activity early in the year, yes, and they want to do it. Yes, I'm so looking forward to showing you brass polishing. Let's do this first. I am going to show you, but not today.
Linda Kale always says, the child will say, but when? And she says, I'll let you know.
Yeah, I love, right. I'll let you know, or soon. Yes. So let's do this first.
I did want to ask you, Anna, the same question, though. How would you present move, speak, practical life in level 2 and 3?
Oh, so completely different. So you're in the again, it really doesn't matter. But let's say you're in the level 3 atrium, and you come up to me and show me that we have some candlestick holders that are tarnished, and you come up and say, "Wow, look at these! They really need to be polished. Do we have polishing in here?" And so, knowledge, yes. Would you like to do that? Let me see. How about, I'll tell you what, why don't you go ask Rosie to show you where we keep the polishing supplies. And if you have any questions, you can ask Rosie, or you can, if she's in the middle of something, you can ask me.
Yes.
That's how I would do it.
So you're helping them find their answers, not giving it to them.
That's beautiful.
And so in the elementary, oftentimes we encourage the children to ask a friend before getting the adults' help.
Yes. Even last year of level 1, those 6-year-olds love to be the one to show.
They're the experts.
Yes. Could you give the names of the regions to Jessica? She's wanting to trace and paint, and the 6-year-old, they love to sit there. Judea, Samaria. Oh, they love that.
And there's always, that first plane child that's starting to kind of put one foot
emerge
into the second plane.
Yes.
That sometimes they get a little full of the beans, or, they start, and, we start thinking, oh no, are they outgrowing the atrium and that sort of thing. The antidote to that type of thinking is to give them more work, to give them responsibilities.
Yes.
As Marty O'Brien says, the seniors. They are the seniors of the atrium.
Yes, they can read those gesture prayers while they're practicing
or they can
lavabo
make
and
a
offering.
book.
They can lead the closing prayer at the end for everybody. They empower those third-year kids. Not always your 5, 6-year-olds. Sometimes, but really those third-year kids, definitely.
But just making sure that we honor who they are and that we let them live into that. And then we don't get that I'm bored. This is babyish, that sort of thing.
Right. I've found because I've typically been in parishes with really large families, and the youngest child in the family, of 7 or 8, they are always going to be the youngest of their family. That's never going to change. And when they get to have that experience in the Montessori classroom or the atrium of being the oldest, they are the most beautiful, benevolent dictators. They are so happy because they never get that experience to help others, to be the ones to show. That is one of my favorite things of seeing those 6.5-year-olds. And that's when I've said to the mother, when they're so happy, they're not really asking to go to level 2 yet. Let them stay till 7, because they're going to go to level 2 and they're going to be the youngest again, which is fine, but
in good
as much as they can. Yes. And it doesn't have to be right at the semester. I mean, they can transition in November or February or whenever they need, whenever they've outgrown and they need that next level, they can go. We don't follow the traditional
calendar
school system. Right. We're following the need of the child.
Right. And to think that a third year could be turning 6, if you're going by the school calendar, it could be turning 6 or have been 6 for a whole year. It's a year's worth of difference in one age.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, ladies, we have covered a lot of practical life.
This has been some great conversation.
It has.
Yes, this has been wonderful.
And can you believe that we barely even scratched the surface on the questions that people have? So everybody's just going to have to keep watching for those questions to be answered.
I know. It's so true.
It's something. It just shows you how important it is, and it's not a simple subject. It's not an easily exhausted area.
Right. Okay. I think this has been great. And I think people should go back and listen to that episode with Sherry Mock to learn even more if they're hungry for even more.
Yes, definitely.
Maggie, we loved having you on the podcast. Thank you for coming.
Yes, Maggie, you're such a gift.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. This was great. I learned so much. Yeah. This was really great. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you all for listening to this week's episode of the Good Shepherd and the Child podcast. Check out our show notes. I have links for the few episodes that we refer to in this podcast, including the episode we did a few years ago with Sherry Mock on practical life, as well as the episode we just did just a few weeks ago on the grace and courtesy for the second plane child. So those links are there in our show notes. I also want to point you to our link to be able to submit listener questions. So maybe you have a question about the catechesis of the Good Shepherd or an issue in your atrium that you would like me and Anna to answer on the podcast. So check out our show notes for those links. This podcast is sponsored by the United States Association of the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. If you would like to know more about the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd, or if you would like to become a member, please go to cgsusa.org. Thank you all for listening. We will see you in 2 weeks. Go and fall more deeply in love with God.